Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another Landlord Gurus video. I'm Chris. We got Eli here as well. Today we're going to talk about where to list your vacancies, your vacant apartments. We get this question a lot, and we see this on message boards and people asking around, like, where are you listing your units these days? Because it changes quite frequently in terms of which ones, maybe are more popular or which maybe there's new ones out there. And I think a lot of it does, probably depend on your location and the size of the apartment, what type of listing you have. But it's a good question to discuss. We, think about this all the time when we've got our vacancies, where to list, whether it's Zillow and, the prices change to list often. They come up with different plans, but, Zillow, Craigslist, one of the property management software products like Avail or apartments.com. So I did this a while ago. I'll share the post that I did about that in the comments, comparing some of the platforms. And Eli's had a bunch of vacancies recently in the last several months. And so he's been kind of keeping track of where these leads are and where they're coming from, and has some observations. So yeah, welcome, Eli. We'll get into your situation and where you've been listing and where your successes have been from.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So unfortunately, I've had, like Chris said, quite a few vacancies over the last 8 to 10 months. And that's, I think people, first of all, one observation is I think people are now moving, now that COVID's kind of settled down, and I had very little activity, but I'm seeing some shifting there. And just a disclaimer, this is pseudo-scientific, and part of that is that I did change the way I was using platforms kind of midway, and I'll try to allude to that. But I'll go through the vacancies I've had, the 5 of them over the last 8 months or so, one by one, and I'll just give you kind of an idea of where I was getting my leads and some observations. So the first one was a 1-bedroom, and this was in May of last year. This one, I got the overwhelming number of leads from Zillow. One note is that on all of these, I have started to pay for Zillow premium advertising, which I've always been reluctant to do. That's $29 for a flat fee for 3 months worth of premium featured higher visibility listings. So
in theory, that would put your listing kind of at the top of the list when someone is searching for, say, a 1-bedroom in a particular neighborhood in Seattle.
Exactly.
Your listing might come up in the top handful.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would just get lost. You theoretically just kind of lost in the shuffle, and who knows where it would show up.
Right. Yeah. So actually, Chris, let's come back to that at the end. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the pricing of Zillow and what's happened over time there, because it's confusing. So anyway, I got 21 leads from Zillow on this one. I got 10 from a combination of the sites that Avail syndicates to. So we'll put together a list of the sites that Avail and TurboTenant, which are the 2 other platforms that I've been using, where they all syndicate to. There's a lot of overlap there, but I'll also talk about where the listings from those sites have come from. And then Craigslist brought 8 of those leads. I believe that unit was filled from a lead from Zillow. The next one was same time frame. Chris, you got a comment there?
Yeah, so I was going to say, just to clarify, that when you have a vacancy, you'll make a listing. Basically, it sounds like you're making one listing kind of in 3 different places. You'll upload that listing to Zillow, you'll upload that listing to Avail or TurboTenant, whichever one you've chosen, and you'll upload that listing to Craigslist.
Exactly. And the Avail and TurboTenant listings get you lots of different places,
right?
And that's the benefit there. And as we've seen many times before, it really pays to list all over the place, even though it's kind of a pain. Right. So, of what 40 leads that I got out of this, half were from Zillow, approximately a quarter were from TurboTenant, or that would Avail in this case, and then a quarter from Craigslist approximately, which is consistent with what is happening.
Sure. And with Zillow, they also have 3 sites in their system. So when you list on Zillow, you're also getting it on HotPads, and you're getting it on Trulia. Yeah.
Okay, so the next listing was for a 4-bedroom house. So it's very different in nature. Apartment building, small scale apartment building, to a single family home in a nice neighborhood. So here again, we got even a larger percentage of leads from Zillow. And my guess is that Zillow is particularly strong when it comes to single family houses. And I think that probably comes from the fact that people are used to interacting with Zillow from kind of a real estate listing standpoint, purchase and sale standpoint.
Right.
So they're used to going there and thinking about it for single family homes.
Some of those people may have actually been looking for homes to buy at some point and
Yeah.
because, you know, maybe renting was better for them at the time.
Yeah, this tenant had recently sold a house in the same neighborhood. So they were definitely in that kind of mentality,
Yep.
you know. And then, so we had 20 leads from Zillow on that house, one through Avail, I believe. I was making transition here, and then another 3 from Craigslist.
Oh, wow. So pretty high proportion, almost all from Zillow, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that really stands out there. That was in May as well. So the next listing was in October. That was a 2-bedroom apartment and, you know, even smaller, a 6-unit building. On that listing, we had 7 leads from Zillow, 0 from Avail, and 7 from Craigslist. So, and the 0 from Avail is, I'm pretty sure, me. So again, pseudoscientific. Take that information for what you're paying for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, because usually we do pretty well with Avail, or at least, you know, we get a number of leads from them.
For sure. Yep. And I absolutely don't mean that one shouldn't list there.
Yeah. Okay.
And the next one was basically the same time, same building, a 1-bedroom unit. And on this listing, we got 16 leads from Zillow, 11 from, this was through Turbo Tenant. And then Craigslist was another 7. So you're getting back to that 50, 25, 25 kind of,
Right. Yep.
roughly speaking. That was also in October. And then currently, actually, I'm marketing a 1-bedroom in the 10-unit apartment building. And I've been listing it since the beginning of December. I have not yet filled it. So it's the 10th of January. I'm being patient. I'm not dropping the price radically yet. So I take it as this just being a really rough time to.
It's hard to do in the holidays. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And my experience is if I drop my prices too fast, I often realize that it was just slow traffic and the dropping the price didn't make the difference.
Right.
Yeah. But that's, again, just an anecdotal observation,
Right.
which I often have at certain times of the year. It seems like April is another one that I've historically had trouble with.
Okay.
So, and on this, this listing is kind of abnormal actually in terms of the trends. So this listing, I've had 4 from Zillow, 12 from Turbo Tenant, and 7 from Craigslist. So, you know, the leads from Craigslist are really consistent actually now that I'm looking at it. And the balance, I think, between Zillow and the Turbo Tenant or Avail platforms, most of that differentiation, I think, has to do with how I was using it. But you can see there, you know, Zillow is an imperative. I'm getting roughly 50% on all listings from there. So.
Yeah, and I think we've noticed that before, and I've noticed that, and maybe that was indicated in my previous post that I'd made, where the majority do seem to come from Zillow. And you know, to be fair, I haven't been listing on the premium list,
right? Yeah,
but still, it does feel that Zillow is pretty ubiquitous. Everybody knows about Zillow.
So maybe we ought to touch on what the pricing trajectory has been with Zillow. Do you want to speak to that, Chris, about how it's all shifted all over the place in the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, it used to be free, which was great. And then they moved to a model where it was like $9.99 a week.
Right.
It's something like that for everybody across the board. You had to pay the $9.99. So I probably paid for it when it was like that. And then
you got one listing free.
Yeah, that's right. So you got your first one free, but then it was $9.99 for a week.
For any other one. Yeah.
Exactly. And then in the last year and a half or so, they've moved to this model that they currently have where it's $29.99 for 3 weeks, just straight up. So if you rent it in a day, you still pay the $30. If it takes you, 20 days, it's $30. So yeah, and that's where they currentently are with it. Right?
So another aspect of that though is what's called Zillow Feed Connect, where a couple of years ago, they were trying to partner with Avail and Turbo Tenant and some of these other syndication sites so that those sites would populate to the Zillow network as well. And what they did is they had this convoluted, in my opinion, system where to do that you had to pay a fee, which usually I think it was about $1.40 a day for the privilege of doing that.
Getting your listing syndicated from one of the other platforms to Zillow.
Right.
So that you only have to upload it once, basically.
Exactly. So I never did that. I've always maintained my listings on Zillow, on Avail, or other syndication platforms, and Craigslist all separately. And keeping everything lined up in terms of any shift in pricing, you got to stay on top of it.
Do it everywhere.
You got to do it everywhere. But
communication would be in a separate platform, things like that.
Right, right. What I do now is I bring leads from Zillow or Craigslist into TurboTenant, which is the platform I'm using currently.
Okay.
So that way I can get applications there, which is how I proceed with screening and leases and rent collection. So
Right.
it does help to bring it all into one place. So anyway, to go back to the Zillow Feed Connect, I don't think that's really
I'm not sure they're
around
doing that
anymore.
anymore. Yeah.
Right. So they've shipped all over the place. At least the $29.99 is simple. And I think that's why they've landed there.
Right.
But it's not fun to pay it. But.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. It does feel pricey, but at the same time, they've got eyeballs.
Yep. Yeah, you got to do it.
Now you don't now, but their current plan, you don't have to pay that $29.99. They do still have a free option, don't they? Where you can list, but like we said before, your listing may not show up at the top, or it might show, who knows, it might not show up at all. But
Yeah.
But if the tenant is searching using the map function, they're just looking at a particular area on the map, I think your listing will still show up in the right location. But yeah, so that's just the difference though. But if they were looking in a list view, that your listing would be behind all the other sponsored ones. Yeah.
Down the list.
Right
Yeah.
on the list. Yeah.
Which that's consistent with apartments.com too.
Right. Exactly.
So that's a good lead into then where my leads are coming from, when I'm syndicating from, property management software platform. So this is just a sampling, but one observation is I'm getting leads from Redfin via TurboTenant. And I think Avail didn't syndicate there. And my guess is that people are new to searching on Redfin for rentals. I don't think that that's been a place that people have searched up until recently. It seems like they're making some ground there. Zumper has always been pretty strong, both through Avail and through TurboTenant. Apartments.com, this is kind of a half. I get about half of my leads from apartments.com. So even though apartments.com has a similar model that Zillow does now, where you have to pay, and it's quite expensive to get featured higher on apartments.com if you list directly there. I am having success there without paying on apartments.com. And then just recently, I have had a couple of leads directly through TurboTenant. They have their own listing platform, as does Avail. So those are a smaller number, but what I get is all my leads coming into TurboTenant from Redfin and apartments.com and rent.com and apartment list. And that works the same way on these different syndication platforms where it all feeds into one place. And that way I communicate back from that platform and I don't have to be communicating on the individual sites.
Right. And like you said, it's great then at that point, if you can get your applications there, you can do your screening there, you can do your leasing there. And once they're in that platform, then it's all streamlined from there on out.
Right. And all those property management software functions that you just listed, most of those Zillow does. They do it in a simpler, less robust way.
Yeah.
They don't have nearly as many accounting features or, more sophisticated rent collection, or, it's a much simpler offering.
Yeah. Last time I looked, the leasing was only applicable in a handful of states as well. So.
Right. They don't have the 50 state leases, customized leases like, Avail and TurboTenant do, for example. Rent Ready, many of the sites that we talk about that have kind of a broad function set are much more robust in their offerings. So Zillow also has a phenomenon where it's very easy to be a tire kicker there, where you look at a listing and then you click a box and you send it. And usually what I get is, I'm interested in this apartment. I'm wondering when I can come see it. They've done no work to do that. It's a click.
Right.
So 30 and sometimes closer to 50% of people just never follow up when I, come back to them on that. So it's just too easy.
Exactly.
And for that reason, I also turn off the ability for people to apply through Zillow, because it's that easy for them to apply as well. They pay once and they can scattershot their applications out to a whole bunch of different properties.
Yeah, without even seeing it.
Yeah.
Without even talking to you, without meeting you, and any of that. Yeah.
Which is really a problem in a place like Seattle, because we're required to take the first qualified applicant. Right. So if you get an application sight unseen and they meet your criteria for acceptance, then you have to go with that person. The worst of it is that they don't even know if they want the apartment yet because they haven't seen it.
And you have to give them 48 hours to accept or decline.
Right. So you're locked up in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. You can't take any other applications. You can't commit to anybody else. And it's not 48 hours, and you do it again and it's another 40 hours, and who knows how long it's going to take. So yeah.
That's part of my pre-screening is when do you want to move?
Yeah.
And you don't get that option when somebody can automatically send you an application.
Exactly.
Another observation I've had just recently in the last 6 months or so is that property management companies, or I think online marketing companies of some sort, are starting to respond to my applications. And essentially they're saying, hey, I'd like to help you rent this out. These are not potential renters.
Right.
These are people that are soliciting me to pay them, or somebody's paying them to rent the apartment. So I don't think there's anything I can do about it, but it's something to watch for, and it's very unwelcome
Yeah.
in my mind. So, and another is the ability for people to send inquiries through the phone. And I'm getting quite a few of those. I get basically a voicemail through Zillow. And that's really not the format I want to get it in. I want it to be in a written form so that I can have questions and I don't have to take several more steps in order to get to that point.
Right.
So,
and you can document when they came through and when they, keep track of where everybody is in the process, for sure.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
One thing I've noticed that I am not a fan of is that TurboTenant sends my phone number, includes my phone number on the listings, and in particular apartments.com. I then get phone calls. And again, I don't, even if it is legitimate, I don't really like getting phone calls. I like a written correspondence right off the bat. So, that's a minor one, but it's a pet peeve of mine. And I don't actually know. I think Zillow must be including an encrypted phone number because I don't get phone calls. I get voice messages.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And then I guess my last takeaway is that people ignore the criteria. I get about 20% of people that either smoke or have animals, even though I say explicitly in my listings that I don't accept either of those things. So
I don't know that that's necessarily based on one of those platforms. I think that's just in general, but
I think it might be a little bit more around Zillow because it's so easy to just fire off queries, but no, it's everywhere. People just hope when they have animals in particular, they hope to squeak past that because it's harder. So,
okay. Yeah, and great. Well, that's really insightful. It's good to see like the actual real numbers as far as where you're getting leads from and which platforms are working. And again, this is based on just our information that we've done here in Seattle. And there are other markets where it might be different, where, maybe Facebook Marketplace might be really good in some places, or Craigslist is better here than other places. So yeah, I mean, if you have your own thoughts and your own anecdotes, please leave them in the comments below. We'd love to hear what platforms are working for you guys. And, remember to like and subscribe and do all those things as well. But yeah, and then I guess, our final takeaway, and we've talked about this before, is, it's just good to list your rental on a variety of sources. The more that it gets out there, I think, is the better. Even if it means, you're listing it several times and you have to change the price, across different platforms, or you're getting emails from different platforms. It probably still makes sense just to get that out there, get eyeballs on it, get it rented.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.